Hey guys, here we are again, another week, another couple of stories in the Action Bible. I hope you're enjoying reading the Action Bible. That was kind of the point of the whole thing, was give you a colorful, simple Bible to read. I mean, the real Bible has a lot of words in it. It can be hard to read, but I hope you're enjoying this sort of simplified version that gives you the stories of the Bible. Our readings continue today with more stories about David. As we pick it up, Saul is still king and David is still a refugee, but the end of Saul's reign is coming close. Saul is becoming more and more desperate. He's come to understand that God is no longer fighting for him, and that troubles him, as it should. But instead of repenting and turning to the Lord, Saul just keeps on going his own path. At one point, he consults a fortune teller, a practice that God had forbidden, but he goes for that kind of guidance anyhow. Don't you ever fall for astrology or anything like that. It's all nonsense that Christians shouldn't deal with. At the end, Saul ends up committing suicide. He is so full of despair, so empty of hope that he can't see any path forward, and he falls on his own sword. Thus is the sad ending of Israel's first king, Saul. Now, when David gets word that Saul has died, strangely, he doesn't rejoice about it. He's not happy about it. Instead, he mourns over him. So Saul treated David like an enemy, but David still honored him as Israel's king. And there's some lessons in there about the way that we should honor and respect those who are in authority over us. Even if we don't like them, there is still something to be said for the honor and respect that David shows them. And it also shows us something about what it really means to love our enemies. I mean, David loved the man who was trying to kill him. I think that's an important thing about us when Jesus says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This is the kind of thing he's talking about. But even with Saul gone, as you read the story, you realize David is still waiting to be king over all of Israel. Judah anoints him king, but the other tribes have to be coerced. There's a civil war, and there's 7 years of battle and intrigue. And just think of that for a second. David was, what did we say, maybe 12, when he was first anointed. Now he's 30. Imagine your age being 30. So I can tell you from my own experience, when I was your age, I knew that my 30th birthday was going to be in the year 2000. And I never thought I'd live to see it. It seemed so far in the future. But David waited. He waited and he waited. And it paid off because he became the king of all of Israel. So again, David's story tracks along with Jesus' story. Remember last week we talked about Jesus in his state of humiliation, where he didn't have any of the honor, any of the glory, anything that went along with being the Son of God. And he went right to the cross, loving his enemies. Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. And you were part of that. He prayed for you on the cross. On the third day, Jesus rose again. And suddenly all of God's promises were kept, and Jesus was exalted, and he was glorified, and he was honored again. We call that his state of exaltation. Jesus goes from humiliation to exaltation. David goes from being a fugitive to being king. And we walk through this life, and it's kind of a hard life sometimes, but we always know that off there in the future, God has a promise for us. God has a future for us, even if it has to wait until the day of resurrection. So we are people of hope. We know that someday our day of exaltation is coming. Enjoy your reading today. I'll talk to you next week.